Les carottes de la calotte polaire sont cuites.
Sea ice is thinner than ever and cause for global concern.
United Nations warns of spreading violence and anarchy.
Les raisons de la colère crépitent et les flottes d'icebergs menacent l'Afrique, le fric. Combien de degrés sous zéro quand les infos nous glacent le sang?
C'est un timing là, au niveau planétaire, qu'est-ce qui se passe présentement. Il y a plusieurs crises qui se superposent. Puis ces crises-là, mises ensemble, remettent en question le système dans lequel on évolue depuis plusieurs années.
I became an activist when the river I loved as a child was threatened.
Courage, apôtre du changement, je m'enivre, je m'ennoie, je me terre, je me ciel. À ton appel, je descends, descendant en trombe, chutant, sautant comme une bombe fleurie.
En haut de ça, ils vont faire le réservoir. C'est pas un barrage au fil de l'eau. Moi, dans ma tête, là, ça se... Ouch! Projet durable, là, mon cul. Ça n'a aucune classe qui veut faire ici, là. Il veut mettre du béton, là, puis enlever 3 chutes.
Tu comptes rester combien de temps sur le bord de la rivière?
Jusqu'à temps que le promoteur Carpentier nous dise qu'il va abandonner les travaux.
Bonjour, M. Carpentier.
Oui, bonjour.
Qu'est-ce que vous répondez aux opposants au projet?
Je pense qu'il peut être assuré que la chute qui va être aménagée, c'est pas la chute dans laquelle il sautait quand il était enfant.
Excusez-moi, M. Carpentier, mais je dois savoir c'est où je sautais quand j'étais jeune. Là. C'est direct la chute là, qui va être harnachée. Ouais.
Mikael Rioux, êtes-vous nombreux à vous y opposer?
Ah oui, puis surtout des jeunes là, de la région. Tous les gens qui viennent me voir sont par centaines à chaque semaine. On m'appuie là, à fond là-dedans. Puis arrêtez de voir le problème au niveau local, municipal, c'est global, c'est au niveau planétaire. Là. Tout ce qu'on consomme dans la vie de tous les jours, il faudrait peut-être commencer qu'il y ait un déclic dans notre tête. Il y a quelque chose qui tourne pas rond.
C'est chacun pour soi, to each his own life. Le consommateur, inhumé sous son toit, est roi. Tant que j'ai mes dollars à moi, mes idolaramas.
Un environnementaliste, l'un de ceux qui s'opposent à la construction de la centrale thermique du Suroît. Un projet.
Les environnementalistes avaient leurs représentants, mais ils n'avaient pas le droit de parole.
L'éolien, ça a une caractéristique, ça s'interrompt, ça. Quand tu arrêtes de venter, ça s'interrompt. Tandis que le thermique, si on peut faire fonctionner ça tout le temps, c'est plus fiable.
Regarde la vague, scélérate, ratera pas les côtes, ni l'épaule, nord, ni l'Antarctique du genre humain. Livré au souffle sans fin des ouragans, de force neuve, vous aurez fait la preuve. Par 10 depuis des décennies, tout finira par disparaître.
There's no miracle solution. What it takes is people with guts who won't give up. I finally got fed up with just asking questions and raising issues. I wanted to find answers and concrete solutions.
Quelle beauté, hein?
That's when I met Christian,
Là, on a l'embouchure du fjord.
and he became my mentor.
Rivière Saguenay, là, on la voit, là, la dépression, là, juste là-bas. Donc ici, là, c'était une petite forêt. Ils ont tout déboisé, ils ont bulldozé. Donc ça, ces travaux-là ont été faits dans l'illégalité la plus complète.
Avoir l'audace de porter sur la grande place des marchands avides l'espoir de nos aïeuls devant le vide, pas fermer sa gueule.
Ici, il y avait plein d'enfants qui plantaient des arbres. On était environ une cinquantaine de personnes là, à reboiser. Donc cette chute-là, là, elle serait presque disparue complètement. Ils ont un débit écologique, mais c'est 0,1 mètre cube seconde. Fait que là, ça serait comme une floche de toilette.
Est-ce qu'ils sont arrêtés, là?
En 2002, on a réussi à les arrêter, mais 6 ans plus tard, le projet revient sur la table. Donc, on a des nouveaux promoteurs qui veulent encore briser ce qu'on a réussi à sauvegarder. Ça tient pas debout, ce projet-là. Pour 3,5 mégawatts, là, c'est complètement fou de penser à faire ça en 2008. C'est le syndrome du castor qui revient encore. Là. Au Québec, on dirait qu'on est juste capable de faire des barrages.
Les castors, ils sont très forts pour jouer de la queue.
We've been very busy. We created the first environmental festival in Quebec, Échofête. We wanted to show people who live here that there are other ways to develop this region.
Entre deux eaux, changer le monde, changer les ondes, lancer sa sonde au fil de l'eau. Au bout du fil de l'autre, tendre la main au-dessus du vide, des idées. Des idéaux au bout du monde, rien ni personne pour nous arrêter. Toi, pour moi, toi, pour l'autre et sans faute, marée haute.
Ça bouge, hein?
My child, you're getting ready to come into the world. But what kind of world?
Regarder le smog comme ça au mois d'octobre, c'est une bonne preuve des changements climatiques qui se produisent. Hein?
Oui, on se rend pas compte que cette saloperie-là peut être évitée. Parce que la plupart des fortunes qui sont faites maintenant sont faites en exonération des obligations environnementales. Et quand je parle d'environnement, je parle de la santé humaine aussi.
Mais toi, là, comme si tu avais 30 ans, là, où ce que je suis, là, mais toi, si tu étais à ma place.
Il n'y a pas de développement qu'il y ait de développement local. Point final. Et l'économie sociale commence au bas de l'échelle où il faudrait qu'on habilite les gens à avoir confiance dans leurs propres moyens. Et à part ça, le dommage écologique, on prétend ne pas le voir. On ne veut pas savoir les poissons qui sont ratissés en fond de l'eau parce qu'il n'y a personne qui va les voir, il n'y a pas d'activistes là, ni de gens en relations publiques. Ça se fait discrètement, ni vu, ni connu. C'est fini. Parce qu'à un moment donné, tout le château de cartes va s'effondrer. Ouais. Et qui va avoir la force politique d'arrêter ça?
Porté par la rivière du changement, partager notre sens du partage et courage, nager au-delà des calculs du doute, au-delà des chiffres qui divisent.
Christian is a pioneer of the environmental movement in Canada. He has set up sustainable programs in over 50 countries. And in 1992, he was named one of the 12 wisdom keepers at the Earth Summit in Rio.
Et Roosevelt le disait à un de ses amis qui était venu le voir là, au début du siècle passé, ne viens pas me raconter ces histoires-là. Je le sais. C'est si tu sors et que tu reviens à ma porte avec 10 000 personnes pour me le dire, là, je devrais t'écouter et je pourrais t'écouter. Ben, il tente. Il tente de le faire.
Ouais, mais ça, il faut rassembler le monde.
Il y a des noyaux, mais il faut les mettre ensemble.
Jongler, la broue dans le toupette, pousser notre brouette au grand diable des vents, entêté comme le Nordais. Alors ravale ta rage et n'hésite plus. Change le monde.
Christian sent me on a journey to meet some of the creative thinkers he felt offered the best solutions for the future of our planet. First on the list, John Todd and Nancy Jack Todd.
So what makes you optimistic for the future?
I'm optimistic because in theory, it's possible to reduce our negative impact on the planet by 90%. And we can do that simply by redesigning the way we support ourselves. And that's technologically possible.
We cannot be fully optimistic. We must be provisional catastrophist. A catastrophe will occur unless there's provision for us to act.
I personally think that as a civilization, we're sleepwalking into the future. What we need, as our mentor in this case, is nature itself. So our need now is to go at this quest of decoding nature's operating instructions. If we can do that, we can redesign our buildings, our agriculture, our waste, our environmental restoration, our manufacturing, to actually create a very high society that has nothing but a healing impact on the planet. And once you make that as a design goal, you'd be surprised how things start to pop up that are exciting and wonderful that can be done. If there's to be a great design project for the 21st century, where do we get our information? I think that information is basically in the nature of life itself. This is a project that I think is important in the city of Fuzhou in South China. And it's a city of canals. All of those buildings that you look at discharge directly into the canals. There's no sewage treatment. They smell horrifically and they look like that. We were asked if we could clean up a sewage canal in a cost-effective and beautiful way, and we said, sure. We were starting to climb up, Everest in a bikini and a pair of diver's boots. And you can actually walk along that canal and reach down, pull up water that looks like drinking water. And birds and butterflies are being seen now that haven't been seen in a very long time. I think that in the urban landscape, this is where we need to be headed.
John Todd developed the living machine which imitates nature. He recreates an ecosystem with plants, microorganisms, algae, and fish. The result? A water filtering system that's efficient, inexpensive, and absolutely natural.
Tu fous de la merde d'un côté, tu mets des petits poissons dans l'autre, puis finalement, au 4e épisode, tu mets ton verre d'eau, puis tu le bois. La preuve est là, hein, tu crèves pas.
So, this is my playpen. But this is a really unusual playpen. And it is a miniature farm for the cultivation of tropical shrimp, the big jumbo yummy shrimp that everybody wants to eat. Most shrimp farming is very destructive. Yeah. So the idea was, could we grow shrimp in a way that would take very little energy? You can see all the life growing underneath it. Then they grow throughout these things. They also grow on these nets that hang down, and life grows on that. There's a shrimpy. Come on, guy. And but what makes me really excited about this is I'm going to take this concept to a nearby waste management facility. I am going to take and build a several hectare greenhouse. And I'm going to take the gases that come off the landfill, that will produce the electricity, equivalent to about 5,000 homes off the dump. Oh. Then I'm going to take the carbon dioxide from the landfill and pump it into the seawater and grow algae. And then the algae, they're going to be fed to the shrimp.
Amazing work. Yeah.
And one of the lovely things about working on this scale, you can make all the mistakes you want below the radar screens of people. There aren't big investors in here from banks with suits sitting around saying, "Oh, John, your growth rate is good on only 10% of the shrimp. The other 90% just don't come up to our calculations here.
On Cape Cod in the 1970s, when they were my age, John and Nancy, along with other young scientists, started a very innovative project.
Originally, when it was New Alchemy, all this was for food. So we grew most of the food we needed in the way of vegetables and fruits in here. We grew bananas that ripened in February. Everything possible. It's called a bioshelter because it's more than just a greenhouse.
So you were basically a bunch of friends that started working together and had a dream.
This was well before people were talking about sustainability, well before we were really worried about climate change. We were doing a lot of research into the fact of how much was going wrong with polluting air and water, etc. But then we started to ask the question, is it possible to support people sustainably on this planet? And so what we set out to do here was to test whether you could indeed grow food organically, produce renewable energy without a lot of fossil fuels, etc. And then bring them together in some form of shelter or architecture. It took us from the founding of New Alchemy through to about 75, 76 to say, yes, we could support people sustainably on the planet. A lot of changes in the way we do things, but it could be done.
Yeah.
And would go off every, for maybe only for 30 years.
The new alchemists had no field experience when they first came here. By observing nature itself, they became pioneers in ecological design.
And the reason why I argue that nature should be our mentor is that for 3+ billion years, life has been evolving, trying things out in such ways so that whether you're a northern forest or a coral reef, you know how to use light, nutrients, in ways that are literally orders and orders of magnitude smarter than we are as people.
As the waters rise in Manitoba and North Dakota, we present the latest news on the flood watch.
Civil unrest, starvation, and destabilizing sovereign states.
24,000 children are dying every day from hunger-related causes.
I am feeling a little bit on the terrified side myself.
Hop!
Bonjour.
Bon, mais je suis content, enfin.
Sont tes cheveux?
Mes cheveux sont tombés.
L'âge?
Ouais. T'as repris du poids?
150 livres d'air. J'étais tombé à 122.
Wow!
La grande faucheuse n'a pas voulu de moi. Elle m'a dit qu'il y avait encore du travail à faire, là.
Ouais.
J'ai eu une archiviste ici. Elle m'a laissé des tas de boîtes qui ont tous le même titre, à trier. C'est pour lui qu'on fait tout ça.
Tu te dis qu'il faut aller au plus pressant. C'est quoi, selon toi, le plus urgent?
Il faut que la citoyenneté se reprenne en main. Elle ne peut pas dire « Ah, c'est le maire qui fait pas ça » ou bien... Finis cette affaire-là. On doit être à la tête du changement. Alors on s'est dit, bon, ce qu'on veut faire en Inde, on ne va pas prendre des tas de technologies nouvelles, mais seulement des technologies qui sont adaptées à la culture locale. La formule de DA, c'est une formule humanitaire qu'on peut répandre partout.
DA, that's Development Alternatives, a movement co-founded by Christian in India 25 years ago.
Bye bye, bébé.
As I go around looking for ways to save the planet, I'm burning tons of carbon by taking a plane. Kind of ironic.
That looked like any other North American shopping mall.
Same as everywhere else. This is it. This is the culture of the future. Surest way to destroy the planet that much faster. Well, this, Mikael, is our new building. The idea is to minimize the amount of material and energy that we use. We built it right into a green forest over here so that we can always be in contact with nature.
Christian told me about the beginning of DA.
We are joined at the hip. I was in UNEP, in the United Nations Environment Program, in Nairobi, and he was in the Commonwealth Secretariat in London. And we kept going around the world, shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers, and we were seeing the place getting worse and worse. So one day we made a pact. We said, let's give this international jet setting up and start something up that would make a difference. Is that how he told you?
Yeah.
Christian is an inveterate shopper, so he had gone around the antique stores of the world, picking up 19th century technologies like calcium carbide lamps and steam engines and all kinds of stuff, and he'd shipped them out at my cost to Delhi. So when I arrived, I had all these great technologies for making paper, for making bricks, compressed earth, and so on, and we had a head start. Hey, Christian, how are you?
For my age, I'm not doing too badly.
But I got your friend Mikael here.
Hello, Christian.
He says that you've been teaching him how the planet is going to survive with the help of people like him.
And like you.
Well, you know, we're over the hill now, Christian. It's not
What
that
hill?
easy anymore.
What hill? I don't see any hill.
Well, see, Christian, you remember 35 years ago, you and I met over there in Stockholm at the UN Conference on the Environment.
Yes.
And now, 35 years later, the world is not better, it's worse. So
But
don't give me that.
It's the greedy guys that know how to hoard their speculations and how the taxpayers end up paying the bill. I think that now people are getting on their edge. Food, energy.
We're at a fissure in time, in a discontinuity that is taking place between the past and the future, and we happen to be right there in the middle of it in the present. And Mikael's generation is going to have to jump from a totally dysfunctional past into a totally new and harmonious future. What we need from Mikael is to get the whole of this planet, through its young people, to mobilize the energies of everyone to take it in the right direction. It's not that we've got enough of a tipping point. The whole market is about a tipping point. You bring out an iPod, everybody has an iPod. You bring out a new rock and roll song, and everybody's singing the song. The problem is that we are not finding tipping points for the right solutions. We are living in a world that has completely lost its bearings. Here's a country in which one man made $5 billion in one day of trading. On page 5 of the same newspaper, it said that several dozen farmers had committed suicide because they couldn't pay their debts.
I traveled to Taragram. This is Development Alternatives campus where they develop new technologies which are later put into practice in the field.
So this campus actually also houses the enterprises which are based on 3 basic principles: economic efficiency, social equity, and environmental quality.
One of the projects Rajesh is most proud of is this small business that employs local women. What's great is that they use waste material from the cotton industry to make paper.
This land was all rocky like this before?
Yeah, but last 4 years they are not getting enough water to start cultivation.
Development Alternatives always sends an expert to work with the people in their communities. Despite the drought, they were able to bring this poor, rocky soil back to life. This is just one of 15,000 projects that Development Alternatives is implementing throughout India.
Yeah, good quality.
Yeah.
There's sufficient compost so they can sell it now.
इससे बहुत दूनी फायदा नहीं करती, इसको डाल देते खेतन में तो और अच्छा फायदा नहीं करता इससे, और वो उसको देते हैं तो उससे जमीन बिल्कुल वो देते हैं एरिया और डीपी देते हैं तो उससे कर्री जमीन हो जाती है, इससे फूलती है जमीन.
So you have a good reputation, the best compost in the area. Thank you very much.
धन्यवाद बोल रहे हैं.
धन्यवाद.
अब अपन हमारे के खुशी रहो धन्यवाद खुशी रहो नमस्ते.
Delhi, with a population of 14 million, half of them living in the slums.
Je me lève, tu te laves, ils s'en vont travailler. Vous courez, café frais, têtez vos cigarettes. Et moi je respire, mais quel air je respire, et toi tu te tires. Le matin, l'estomac dans les talons court. Les talons hauts. Au secours.
I visit one of Development Alternatives' urban projects. This is how I meet Abdul, a teenager employed as a recycler at the local school.
अभी काम के लिए ढूंढते हैं लेकिन काम मिलते नहीं है कहीं जल्दी तो मिलेगा नहीं है क्योंकि दिल्ली का कुछ हमारा प्रूफ नहीं है रेशन कार्ड जैसे कि होते हैं बाकियों का है रेशन कार्ड पहचान पत्र ये नहीं है हमारे पास इसलिए कहीं काम नहीं मिल रहा
So mostly the house is running because of Abdul's earnings.
This is where we're from. Quebec here. Right here. India is here. It's really far. Like this is a gift. It's for you. You can put it on your wall. How old are they?
He's 13, he's 14, he's 15.
I'm wondering what is their dream for the future?
आगे जिंदगी में देखेंगे अगर सही आदमी बन गए अगर अच्छे बने कबाड़ी से अगर और कुछ बनना चाहेंगे कि पढ़ाई अगर सही चले तो कुछ बनेंगे जाके एक गाड़ी लूँगा जो भाड़ा देने वाला होगा जो रिक्शा हो या ऐसे जीप हो ऐसे गाड़ी लूँगा जो भाड़ा देने में उसमें पैसा अच्छा कमाए
दिल्ली में नहीं रहना चाहते?
दिल्ली में जब काम ख़त्म हो जाएगा जब चले जाना तो पड़ेगा गांव में तो जाएंगे ही
क्यों?
उतना साथ दे उतना गांव में नहीं जाएंगे तो यहाँ पे थोड़ी रहेंगे हिंदी
This slum is literally right beside one of the nicest schools I have ever seen, where Abdul is in charge of the recycling. This remarkable school takes in pupils from the adjacent slum and has developed a model environmental program.
4 years back, we were told by the government that every school should reach their zero garbage target. That's when I got in touch with DA, that's a development alternative, and they introduced me to the paper recycling unit. You're making your own paper and you're saving a tree from getting cut. Then with the green bin, that is your composting, again DA helped us in getting the enzyme composting. So when you talk to children about humus, say that's your noodles, that's your burgers, and that's what it is. But the problem came with the red bin. And what do I do with polythene? What do I do with glasses? What do I do with metals? Why don't I take this straight to the recycler? And I got Abdul. So that's where I reached the zero garbage target.
पहले 12 घंटे पूरा घूमता था अब मेरे को काम करने में अच्छा लगता है 2 घंटे में पूरा काम हो जाता है
doesn't take a century to get out of poverty. It can be done in 5 years. The question is, do we want to do it? I guess most of the powers that be, the people who control what goes on in the world, don't really want to get rid of poverty.
Is overpopulation the real problem?
No, I mean, population is the problem, consumption is the problem, and these are political footballs. The South, the developing countries say that your overconsumption is causing the problem. The northern countries say your population is causing it. These are false dichotomies. The fact of the matter is both are the problems. Climate change. The North, Americans, Japanese, Europeans are saying, we're not going to do anything unless China and India do it. If the poor countries are going to overtake us, why should we bother? Suicidal. The fact of the matter is that we all have to do something because we're all in this thing. But there's another reason why I think it's very counterproductive to say this. If you draw a curve, and this is from UN statistics, World Bank statistics, you will find that there is a terrific correlation between fertility and the quality of life. The higher the quality of life, the lower the fertility. The lower the quality of life, the higher the fertility. And it's very easy to show. Look, if I go down by 10% in my, energy use, the total amount of change in my lifestyle or in my fertility patterns in the North will be very low. But if I take that same amount over here, look at the difference in the number of babies that will be born. Simply by transferring 5% of the energy that we're using in the North to people in the South, you're going to have an impact, 1.5, 2 billion fewer people in the year 2050. So it is actually in the interest of the rich to help the poor become a little bit better off so they have smaller families.
While I'm searching for solutions, I realize that we are confronted by really, really big issues. I'm afraid that we're going to hit the wall.
There are just so many strains on this system, on the food systems, on the water systems, on the energy systems, on the economic systems, that it could give on any one front. It could give on several fronts at the same time, which is probably more likely. It's going to be tough, particularly for the poor and for the disenfranchised. Of course, it's the ones who've had to survive on nothing who will actually probably come out on top. Because most of us living the lives of luxury are not used to having to live without anything. The world's going to change and it's going to turn upside down. Whether we can avoid the big trouble is really the question. And a little fine-tuning here, changing electrical light bulbs there, doing that little green walk instead of going in a car isn't going to be enough. We're going to have to make some fundamental structural changes.
Right here, you're at the heart of the engine of the financial and maybe world economy.
when I was doing organizational development, work with large organizations, also small ones, to develop their visions in accordance with their values. Now, this was pioneer work 25 years ago. When my clients were bringing in something which is called the budget into the discussions around visions and values, well, the budget came in through the door and the vision and values seemed to fly out of the window. The light suddenly went on. It was an incredible moment to discover how money worked.
Yeah.
Then it's real. You think? I think it is, yes. I don't think Jörg would put an unreal one here, and it's got a chain on it. The secret that I came out with after 7 years research was to realize that money is not what the economists tell us it is, simply. And it isn't a simple medium of exchange, for example. It might be also your freedom. It might be your security. It might be many other things, your happiness. What happens is that you reverse the process. If you say that money is my happiness, and I can't be happy without money, what happens at that moment is that you're defining yourself as chronically unhappy. The prime thing that people in Zurich project on money is their security. The main expense that the Swiss make in their household expenditure is not on food, it's on insurance. Why? Because in order to be secure, they think they need to have more money. We created it to be an instrument for our collective use. But what's happened, because we haven't been conscious, we're at a point where it's become like an addiction. The bottom line for me, doing money work, is not money, it's consciousness. That is the only win-only game that there is on this planet. The more conscious we become, the more chances we have to be sovereign, not just individually, but also collectively. In other words, to change the course of things.
Hello, you're the man.
Well,
at last.
I think you're the man.
Yes, you are. Welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing this for us all.
I want to come here and look at what's happening in Sweden, to be inspired and go back to Quebec and work at a local, more local based in my community.
It's very promising that you have a very serious impression of the problems we are facing. Only that way we can turn around and be creative, finding the solutions. And so we do both in this organization. We are defining by rigorous principles what sustainability implies. And then we are looking at the full scale of problems we are encountering today, then turning around and looking for full-scale solutions tomorrow that will be inherently sustainable. And then finding smart, stepwise approaches to arrive at that definition of sustainability.
I was wondering, what was the starting point of TNS?
My own worries and concerns that actually began in my childhood. I saw how they literally destroyed my play yard, which was a lot of green, forests and so forth. My background as a cancer scientist actually triggered the natural step. One day I was sitting in a microscope to contemplate a cancer cell from one of my patients, and suddenly I got a sort of epiphany. I realized that on that level, we're all the same. And on that level, it should be possible to arrive at consensus. So my dream was to have scientists engaging in a consensus report on what sustainability actually is, how it can be defined, and then recruit decision makers in the process and try to make smarter decisions based on solid ground. And the kickstart would be a mailing of the first consensus report. So what scientists could agree on should be mailed to every Swedish household at every school. I began with the first consensus document with myself and sent it out to a number of researchers and scientists to come with their criticism. My second move was to phone up a very well-known entertainer in Sweden, and she said yes. And then I went to Swedish TV, Channel 1, and he said yes. And then I went to the Swedish government and said me and Swedish TV and all those entertainers and all those scientists are going to kickstart an ongoing learning dialogue on sustainability. And then I went to the Swedish king, and he said yes. And then I went to the sponsors and said me and the king and the government have a little project here that we are running. And in that way, it was possible to mobilize the financial resources behind it. So 9 months after that first consensus document was written, the mailbox opened up in the homes of all Swedes and all schools.
Jorden bildades för 4,5 miljarder år sedan. Den första bilden visar jorden sedd från månen. I det perspektivet känns jorden kanske tydligare som vårt hem i ett kallt och ödsligt kosmos.
So you are now where we were some decades ago, Mikael.
Yeah, not that far. Not that far ago.
Hopeful, I think.
Yes. And the problem now is maybe some people, they look at the situation like, oh, it's so big, and they're paralyzed by the fear. And how to switch the from fear to action, like.
If you do the right stuff, step by step, to get out of being part of the problem, your chances as a company or as a municipality to do relatively better financially actually improves, even if the others don't do it. And that we have shown scientifically. And today we have an obsession of haste and details at the cost of the big picture and time. And what the Natural Step does is it's a framework that applies a scientifically robust methodology to connect short-term with long-term, detail with the big picture, economy with valuable goals. Today, people are still living in the old paradigm when they're leading big organizations. They don't have a clear vision of where they want to be. They don't understand sustainability. So we need to change that. So it's like civilization is entering deeper and deeper into a funnel where the walls that are leaning inwards represent the degrees of freedom to live a good, prosperous life are systematically diminishing. That's what unsustainability means. We can cluster all those problems into basic design errors of society. The first one being that society is so designed that it allows mined materials, such as metals and carbon dioxide from fossil fuels, to systematically increase in natural systems as pollutants. The second principle, society is so designed as well that it allows compounds to increase in concentration. But we never say that. Instead we say PCB, DDT, dieldrins, freons, anti-flammables. Does this mean that we cannot have any mining, that we can't use chemicals anymore? Mother Nature is composed of chemicals and elements. Mother Nature recycles it, performs in another way. So we only have to mimic part of how nature works. The third principle is that besides polluting Mother Nature, we are also removing it physically. We are encroaching more and more physically by bulldozers, chainsaws. We're simply removing natural systems. We're not only polluting them. The fourth principle, besides destroying Mother Nature, we are also systematically eroding the possibility of people to meet their basic needs at the level of the globe.
To make our way out of the blind alley our society has been going down, we need to develop a vision of the future, and then, step by step, take actions to bring the vision into reality. I'm taking a guided tour of eco-municipalities in northern Sweden. Sweden was the first country to have one of these, a McDonald's with a green roof. Next door, the Ford dealer eats itself with the excess heat coming from the deep fryer and the hot water from the Statoil car wash. It's amazing to see a garage with vivariums alongside minivans.
That's actually one part of the climate and ventilation system. So the air goes down and will be cleaned from these plants. Plants take care of.
Wastewater does not go down the drain. It is purified in filter basins and reused. This is the same principle as John Todd's living machine.
This is bulk windshield washer fluid. So you fill up your reservoir in your car.
So you don't need
the plastic container. That's clever.
Yeah.
Many other companies and municipalities are using the natural step model. For example, the hotel chain Scandic. It was close to bankruptcy a few years ago. Now it's a world leader in sustainability. It's this year's venue for the Natural Steps International Conference, attended by scientists, mayors, and corporate leaders.
Ola Isaacson, Volvo Aero Corporation, Archie Kasnet, AD Group, Jonas Kleber, the Soya Group, Dennis Kokak, Lund University, Bernie Lynch, Pittsburgh Green Innovators, Martin Mamoros, Oralite International.
Jag blinkar inte.
I've reached a point where I feel that I could generate a lot of money. I earn well money and I invest it well. And what am I going to say in 30 years when they say, "My dad, what am I going to do with all this money that you created when there's nothing to buy for it?" What do you mean? There's no planet left, they're going to say, right? My vision is that we will help reduce the energy consumption that light is generating, which is about 20% of the energy consumption for the planet, to 10.
Then I think you'll get a lot more energy out of your organization if you actually start to work on sustainability rather than waiting and maybe in the end losing because you haven't done anything.
Paradigm shifts always occur by people like you who begin doing it in spite of that the others don't. And then you pave the way for that kind of political decisions.
And of course, the investments are beginning to flow into these alternatives. Last year, $140 billion were invested in clean tech of one kind or another. That is still a fraction of the flows of capital into hydrocarbon energy investments today. If all the reserves of oil, coal, and gas were produced, extracted, and burnt to generate energy, it would take concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere to 700 parts per million. Every one of those reserves is invested in because we buy into the stocks of the companies that own those assets. The gap between 700 parts per million, which we're already all invested in, and where we need to be, which is probably somewhere between 350 and 450 parts per million, that is the gap between a sustainable world and a collapse into a pretty grim future. That's the gap.
Le fric. Aux 80, ni l'effet de serre vice funéraire erre en jugement sans l'ombre d'un doute. Les raisins en colère s'effritent et des flottes d'icebergs menacent l'Afrique.
This Swedish university offers a master's program to train people to become leaders in sustainability. This year, 60 students from over 20 countries are enrolled.
Eco-activists these days need an awful lot of very tender management to handle this extremely complex flow of optimism one moment and then the next moment, apocalyptic despair. And working with decision makers in society does not invalidate the need to reach out to much wider communities of people who are still confused about what this agenda really means, and to reach out in particular to young people who need to be passionate and very, very angry about what is going on today.
What Jonathan Porter was really trying to do was he was trying to kick people
in the butt a little bit and trying to get some of that anger and some of that passion into it. But I think that at the end of the day, the most important emotion you have to feel for this kind of thing is hope.
I need hope, and the hope I see will be like, okay, the time is running out. Like we know we really need to kick some people in the ass because they're not listening.
I think a lot of the time anger actually comes from finally understanding. You look at the civil rights movement, feminism, ending slavery, it all came from people being angry. And to get back to your point where we know when there's catastrophes coming, people are going to be really angry when that happens.
Well, I don't know what kind of major catastrophe we're looking for. Like, I think people think that someday CNN's going to be like, okay, it's finally happened. That's it. I think it's our developed nation, TV generation, consumer blindfolders that make us think that everything's actually okay. But the sad reality is the vast majority of people on this planet think it couldn't get any worse, really, for a lot of people.
We need to stop closing walls and start reopening things and start living in a way that meets everybody's needs. And that's and by understanding sustainability and not just overcoming climate change and not just, renewables and this, that, and the other, but understanding it in the whole big picture.
We can have all the science in the world and understand natural systems, but if we can't come to work together collaboratively and positively, then all that understanding, all that knowledge won't get us anywhere.
I think it's our responsibility or courage to care for others who doesn't know yet and bring them in that movement by going where they are at right now. Whether they have this big SUV, whether they don't see what actually is the effect of what they are doing.
We wrote letters and we've done like a long process things, but now they're cutting the tree. They don't have the permit, so what do you do?
It takes activists like yourself to block the road, but then somebody's going to have to come around, the politician on the other side, to take the change too. And I think, just like solar energy isn't going to be the solution for a dark climate, and wind energy may be a solution for a windy place. So I think we have to get out of this idea that there's linear, single solutions to universal problems.
While in Sweden, I stayed at Marilyn's house. She's a great friend of Christian's and a specialist in environmental education.
Something that was really interesting when we were working with eco-village development a lot. Some people would say, oh, I could never live in an eco-village. I wouldn't like to be so dependent on other people. And, it's really curious how we don't see how dependent we are on the electricity company and the water company and the sewage company and the everything else. So I think the sustainability movement is a lot about bringing this kind of thing home to us, about making it, repersonalizing all the things that we rely on other people for. Mm-hmm.
Quand je regarde l'avenir, souvent je peux trouver ça assez déprimant, mais comment on fait pour garder l'optimisme, pour continuer à vouloir lutter, là?
Surtout de ne pas l'apercevoir comme lutte. C'est un jeu, c'est une danse. On danse avec les autres.
Moi, j'ai un peu été catégorisé comme activiste, personne un peu rebelle, presque anarchiste. Ça peut pas être soutenable de toujours être sur les dents, toujours prêt à partir en lutte contre un projet. Je l'ai essayé pendant quelques années, mais après un certain temps, là, on vient épuisé. Il y a un côté de moi qui veut un dialogue. Et il y a l'autre côté de moi qui ressent plus la frustration, puis là c'est assez, il faut être plus radical, il faut renverser le gouvernement, il faut qu'on sorte dans la rue tout le monde. Je n'arrive pas encore à trouver quelle est la vraie réponse à tout ça. Je crois qu'il y a aussi un équilibre entre les deux.
Change happens when there's a reasonable balance between dissatisfaction and hope. too much dissatisfaction and no hope, then you have no possibility to change. All hope and no dissatisfaction, you have no reason to change. And we need the hope that what we do can make a difference.
One last stop before I go home. I have the opportunity to meet Dr. Wangari Maathai from Kenya. This remarkable woman is the founder of the Green Belt movement and recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. She's on a speaking tour in the US.
We lose touch with nature, yet we are part of that nature. Every food we eat, which we pick up at the supermarket, has been grown in the soil. When you see brown rivers, you're seeing tragedy because you are losing the soil. And maybe you are losing the soil because the forests have been cleared upstream. And when you lose forests, you're losing habitats. And when you lose habitats, you lose species. Future generations will need these resources. %20 of all the greenhouse gases that are pumped into the atmosphere are coming from deforestation. And that 20% is bigger than all the greenhouse gases that are being pumped into the atmosphere by the entire transport sector. So every one of us should have at least 10 trees they can count and say, those are my friends. They take all the carbon dioxide that I breathe out. And it is very important that we sustain them, because they are our best friends. They help us live on this planet.
What was the starting point of the Green Belt movement?
I used to go out and do research, and I observed that the environment was degrading. Why do we have so much soil erosion during the rains? Why are we having these floods? And later on, I linked that with deforestation. So that was one way in which I realized that we needed to do something. And I suggested to the women, let us plant trees. We can all plant a tree. And that to me then became a symbol of the environment. But when I was starting, I was not starting a movement. I was starting just a small project. We could not have been more than 5 when we started, just a small group of people. But I think what was important was the way we were able to link what we were thinking with the needs of communities, and especially the needs of women. The vision is to protect the environment. The vision is to make the environment sustainable so that it can sustain their livelihoods. And that actually is what put me on a path that changed the very small project that I had conceived to an engagement that eventually became a full-time preoccupation.
We've been given instructions. No one should enter here despite anything. We are ready for anything.
Ni kwa nini unaona tunataka kulinda misitu? Tunajaribu kulinda misitu kwa sababu ndiyo maisha yetu.
We want honesty, we want justice. If you're going to shed blood because of our land, we will. We are used to that. Our forefathers shed blood for our land. We will do so. This is my blood. And it reminds me of the blood that Wayaki shed, trying to protect Karura Forest.
To be able to enjoy peace is very important for us to appreciate that we live in a finite planet with the finite resources and with a huge population that is going to compete for these resources. So we need to change our mindset. We need to at least think how we deal with each other. Otherwise, we can destroy each other and ourselves as we compete over these resources.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike, it really is.
Quelle beauté, hein?
C'est un vieux parc ici, en tout cas, les arbres sont assez vieux. Qu'est-ce qui ressort, c'est qu'il y a une crise qui s'en vient. On peut l'amoindrir, mais il faut surtout préparer un modèle pour après. Donc, s'il y a des modèles qui existent déjà, puis il y en a, qui commencent à émerger un peu partout, bien, c'est avec ces modèles-là qu'on va construire l'avenir.
Oh, c'est clair qu'une grande partie de ce qu'il faut faire dans ton coin, c'est de rouvrir l'intérêt des gens, des jeunes, des parents, à ce que vous soyez un foyer pour recréer une morale de groupe, une morale coopérative qui n'existe plus.
From Carl and Rick and Marilyn, I learned the importance of creating alliances and getting a consensus. And above all, maintaining a dialogue with your opponents as well as with your allies. And now that's my focus.
Aujourd'hui, moi, ce que je voulais voir avec vous, c'était de tâter l'intérêt de la MRC, puis pour un début de démarche dans l'entreprise Natural Step.
Bonjour, Pistol. If you like some tools or concepts around sustainability, you can make better use of those tools and concepts if you have this big picture framing of sustainability at large. Would there be any interest in your beautiful part of the world? I would be more than happy to be of assistance.
Ça coïncide tout à fait avec ce qu'on veut faire de notre territoire. Et que ce soit Mikael qui ait le souci, qui en a fait la démonstration, hein, qu'il avait le souci de l'environnement, qui revienne avec une démarche, entre guillemets, plus raisonnée, hein, plus sage. Mikael, là, c'est un enfant prodigue. Puis le père du territoire, c'est un peu André Leblanc aussi, qui est le paternel de ce territoire-là. Et notre enfant prodigue, hein, qui a quitté il y a quelques années, revient maintenant. Et tout à l'heure, qu'est-ce que j'ai vu? Ils se sont donné la main. C'est magnifique, ça. Hein?
exactement pour ça, là, à semer le positif. Là, c'est ça qui est entrepris, là, pour rallier les gens à des idées constructives, là, puis dire qu'on a possibilité de faire.
Moi, je trouve ça très motivateur, Mikael. Je te le dis en face, là, parce que je venais ici ce matin de reculons, OK? Parce que ce qu'on a vécu, là, comme opposant sur un projet, je me dis, enfin, on va-tu réussir quelque chose dans les Basques? OK? Enfin, on a une même vision.
4 days later, local newspapers reported the return of the project to dam the river. We can't let that happen. The Trois Pistoles River has become a symbol for a generation that wants to control its own destiny and develop the region in a different way.
Si tu regardes où on en est au Québec, c'est le moment de penser grand.
Puis Échofête est en train de devenir non seulement juste un festival annuel, mais aussi une organisation qui va travailler dans l'environnement à l'année. Puis là, mon mandat au cours de la prochaine année, ça va être favoriser le transport actif, faire la création de jardins communautaires intergénérationnels. Ensuite de ça, il va y avoir aussi un volet éducationnel avec les écoles vertes à Brantford.
C'est pas vrai que c'est un seul homme qui va faire la différence. Ça va être un paquet de facteurs, ça va être un paquet de personnes, ça va être un paquet de groupes de citoyens qui sont... Puis c'est en train de se produire, ça, à l'heure actuelle. Donc moi, je veux participer à ça. Je veux renseigner le monde sur les solutions que j'ai appris qui existent. Des trucs vraiment concrets. Je veux aller faire le tour des écoles, rencontrer les jeunes, expliquer qu'on peut envisager l'avenir avec optimisme.
L'activité humaine, la pollution humaine a vraiment un impact indéniable, mesurable sur ce qui se passe avec notre planète. Un baril de pétrole qu'on extrait dans les sables bitumineux de l'Alberta, c'est comme en termes de pollution de gaz à effet de serre, c'est quatre fois la pollution d'un baril qu'on extrait de façon traditionnelle. On donne chaque année à ces compagnies-là en subvention, en abris fiscaux, 1,5 milliard de dollars. Est-ce que ces compagnies-là ont vraiment besoin de notre argent? Je pense que non. Si on commence à forcer ces compagnies-là à payer pour leur pollution, bien, ils vont peut-être vouloir en faire un peu moins de ces projets-là et faire des projets d'énergie renouvelable, investir dans l'efficacité énergétique, ce que certains font déjà, certaines de ces compagnies-là le font.
Le 18 octobre, pour moi, c'est une date bien spéciale. Le 18 octobre 2002, c'est le début du siège de la rivière Trois-Pistoles. 4 ans plus tard, jour pour jour, ce petit bébé-là il est né la même date. Et aujourd'hui, on a développé une alternative à ce projet de mini-centrale privée-là, qui est l'Échofête. Ça fonctionne très bien, on le voit bien. Moi, je veux vous dire que Mikael Rioux, il est vraiment pas tout seul là-dedans. Il y a toute une gang avec lui qui organise Échofête. Puis j'aimerais ça que ce monde-là monte sur la scène avec moi. Parce que c'est incroyable le mouvement qui est en train d'être créé ici. Puis si tout le monde s'implique, on fait bien plus d'argent avec un festival qu'avec un barrage. Ce mouvement-là, ce qu'on est en train de réaliser, c'est que partout sur la planète, il y a des petits groupes de citoyens qui font des luttes super importantes. C'est tout ce monde-là ensemble qui vont faire une différence dans l'avenir.
We are inspired by everything I've seen, from development alternatives and the natural step to the Green Belt movement. These movements took 10 to 15 years to develop into what they are today. Échofête is still very small, but we definitely have a vision for the future.
C'est vraiment ici là, où ce que le fleuve se transforme vers l'océan. Là.
C'est vraiment unique.
Ça fait 3 ans que je te parle de Trois-Pistoles, puis
Ben, c'est ça.
comme la destination finale.
Arrête. Tu fais monter une tente autour de moi, ici je reste.
J'étais content de t'amener ici, puis c'est comme la seule récompense que je peux te donner pour la chance que j'ai eue de rencontrer les personnes que tu m'as fait rencontrer.
Ben, voyons. Et puis il y en a d'autres, hein. Merveilleux.
When I last saw my mentor Christian, he wasn't very strong. I was hoping to have him around a little longer so we could show him more of the work that we're doing in Trois-Pistoles. It's still embryonic, but we're on a path, and I feel that he's with us, watching over our steps, and I know that he will guide us in the right direction.
Is anybody home? Do you give a good damn? Or is this just part of the final slam? Some Smithfield ham, pandemic produced by anemic pigs. But that ain't the monster that really eats. We got the Wall Street. Cause ain't you been told? They've already bought and soiled enough oil to kill us all. So these aren't no times to stall. Cause these oil boys own them car boys. And now they're telling us they're broke. Broke. Man, what a joke. It's the Las Vegas swimming pool syndrome. Golf courses in the desert? Ain't nothing science cannot achieve. Oh yeah? So grieve for the species. It just might be yours. Why? You don't think everything is a commodity? Well then you must be an oddity. It's about time the big boys got in on the real eco business. Carbon credits. Oh, great leaders out there, we've got to clean up the mess. Pretty soon there'll be nothing left to breathe or steal. No more wheel on the deal. Humpty Dumpty sat on Wall Street, swinging to the heartless rhythm, washing his hands, but the blood just won't come off. No ability to discern responsibility for actions taken that could easily be mistaken for the buying and selling of life on Earth. So ask, just what is it worth? Is anybody home? But now if you choose to see, by that I mean be the eye of the storm. Fight all the little battles and choose your big ones. Actions breed action, cause nobody is too important not to be doing what really matters. So cut the chatter. Small things add up, small people add up. Use the power to choose and dump the ruse. It's not as if we can't. Is anybody home?
Est-ce que tu veux aller te promener sur le bord du fleuve?
Non.
Est-ce que tu aimes ça, lancer des roches dans l'eau?
Non.
Est-ce que tu veux aller aux toilettes?
Non.
Est-ce que tu dis d'autres choses que non?
Non. Nous dessiner quand?
Tu veux dessiner?
Oui.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux dessiner?
Et quand?
Une planète?
Non, et quand?
Un crayon? Avec des crayons?
Oui, quand?
Quelle sorte de crayon?
Et quand beaucoup?
Est-ce que tu veux aller voir Olivier?
Non.
Est-ce que tu veux jouer de la batterie?
Non.
Est-ce que...
Je vais pas jouer à non.
Tu veux-tu faire de la musique?
Non. Pour faire la musique.
Tu veux-tu sauver la planète?
Oui.
Il l'a dit. Il a dit sauver la planète.